Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin. I'm Falcoholic Kevin. You guys can see the title. You've heard the teases. You know it's coming. Our first 2024 Falcons mock draft here on Dirty Birds and Brews. Famous last words of me, 3-4 weeks ago saying, well, I think maybe we could get to December before I have to make a mock draft. And, the Falcons blow 3 straight, and here we are picking in the top 10 once again, folks. So it's the bye week. It's time for a mock draft. It's only going to be 3 rounds. I just don't know enough about day 3 picks. I'd just be picking names out of a hat at this point. That's not really giving you much. It's not really doing much for me either. So we're going to focus on the first 3 rounds, where the Falcons at this point are projected to have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. So they're picking 9th right now, officially. In the draft order, they're also picking, I believe, 42nd in the second round. And their third round pick is 73. And then based on how things are shaking out with the Calvin Ridley trade, it's currently slated to be the 3rd round pick that they get. Obviously, he's already qualified for the 4th round pick. The 3rd round pick, he only needs to play 60% of snaps for the Falcons to get the 3rd round pick. And right now he's playing like over 80%. So that he's definitely on track. If he gets 1,000 yards or 75 catches, they'll also get the 3rd round pick. But based on the snaps alone, it's definitely trending towards they'll be getting the 3rd round pick for him. So particularly with Jacksonville, I mean, they're not going to be able to coast. They're not going to be able to take him off the field. They sort of need Calvin Ridley. So it's definitely trending towards the Falcons getting that 3rd round pick. And I believe right now it would be slated to be pick 89. So we're going to operate under the assumption they have the 3rd round pick. Obviously, if the Jaguars sign Calvin Ridley to any extension, whether that's a 1-year deal or a multi-year deal or anything, then it goes up to a 2nd round pick. Obviously, we won't know that until the offseason. So we'll see. But for now, I'm sort of projecting that they're going to get the 3rd round pick. I think that's pretty likely. So right now we're working with 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. That's a pretty good situation. Obviously, I think people would be a lot happier if they had traded that 2nd for Montez Sweat, but unless the Falcons were willing to give up a 3rd, probably in addition to that, they weren't going to be able to get that done. And, we'll see long-term if that's the right call, because they're going to have to start nailing some of these picks. I think day 2 has been the weakest part of Terry Fontenot's draft so far. I think they've done pretty decently on day 3 finding contributors. I think the first round picks have been good, Arthur Smith's usage notwithstanding, but they're going to have to get better on day 2. So maybe we could start that this year with nailing some of these picks. And obviously the jury's still out on a lot of these guys like Bergeron and Zach Harrison. And we don't really know, at this point, like Troy Anderson injured. I think he's shown some very intriguing stuff, certainly. So we're definitely in wait and see mode with a lot of these picks. Obviously the Richie Grant one, not looking great so far. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. But before we dive into this draft, guys, let me bring you a quick word from our sponsor, betonline.ag. Folks, the last of the major pro sports leagues is off and rolling, and college basketball is ready to go. BetOnline remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests, whether that's the NFL, college football, UFC, NHL, NBA. They're all in full swing, and BetOnline is your #1 source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. You can get all the hoops betting action, along with the NFL through the Super Bowl and college football through the college football playoff, available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to the website, betonline.ag today, and remember to use our promo code. It's BELIEVE, for the podcast network like that we're on. It's BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline.ag, promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV for that 50% welcome deposit. Guys, BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so getting into this mock draft, the Falcons are picking in the top 10 now. Like I said, they're picking 9th at this stage. And, the sad truth of it is that we're probably looking at a situation where the Falcons do need to draft a quarterback. Obviously, there's a non-zero chance, right, that Ridder could turn things around over the final 7 games of the season, lead the Falcons on some miracle playoff run, whatever. But outside of that happening and Ridder just really going on a tear over the final 7 games, the Falcons are probably looking for a long-term fit at quarterback heading into 2024. we've heard buzz about Ryan Tannehill. That really shouldn't happen. I mean, if he wants to come in as like a backup, that's fine. But, we also heard Kirk Cousins lately. And again, I think it would be a huge mistake, not because I think Kirk Cousins is bad, but you're going to be paying close to $40 million a year for a guy who's going into his age 37 season, coming off a torn Achilles. It's just not a good idea. It's really, I think the Vikings should just re-sign him and be done with it, honestly. Like, I think his price will come down for them, and it would make more sense for that to happen. But we also don't know if Arthur Smith is going to be the head coach, because if they don't make this miraculous playoff run, if they do miss the playoffs, despite what the reporting has been, despite everything, Arthur Blank has never let a coach stay after missing the playoffs for 3 seasons. He's fired every coach who hasn't made the playoffs 3 straight years. Maybe the Arthur Smith thing is different because they started off on such a low point, but I think they need to make the playoffs to make this happen for Arthur Smith, or there's going to be serious offensive changes with him staying. But again, it's like, I don't really know what the point of that would be. I think you sort of just move on. So we'll see how that plays out. But ultimately, I think they're probably going to draft a quarterback. I think that's the best way to fix the quarterback position. I mean, hitting on a rookie quarterback is the best way to do it. We've seen this time and time again. It's also difficult, right? Because I think 50% of first-round quarterbacks just don't turn into anything. They're not even backup quality guys sometimes. So, it's a crapshoot. But eventually, you have to start rolling the dice, because they haven't so far. They passed 3 straight years at quarterback. I think in 2021 they had an excellent chance to get someone. They chose not to. Maybe that in hindsight ends up being a good idea, because Justin Fields, the jury's obviously still out on whether he can do it or not. And the other guys in that class certainly didn't really pan out outside of the top guys. So we'll have to see, basically, at this point. But I do think quarterback is going to be the pick. And you guys know who it is. I've teased it enough times. It's going to be Jaden Daniels here at pick 9. And I know that's going to infuriate some people. But look, he's not going to be a day 2 pick. It's just not going to happen. I've seen this show enough times to know a quarterback riser when I've seen one. I mean, go turn on Jaden Daniels' tape. Go look at his stats and tell me that he's not going to, this is not Malik Willis. This is not, yes, I made a mistake on Malik Willis. I'm willing to admit that, that I was wrong about Malik Willis, but this is nowhere near that situation. Jaden Daniels is far more polished, far more experienced, and he's played in the SEC, not at Liberty. So all of those things that, people rightfully were cautious on Malik Willis about, Jaden Daniels doesn't have those issues, and he's a much more advanced passer, a much more advanced processor, and he's gotten so much better after a move to a higher level of competition at LSU. And I just love Jaden Daniels. I think he's a potential, not that he would be Lamar Jackson, but that he's like the next in that line of quarterbacks where true dual threat, real talent as a runner, but also very gifted passers, particularly with their deep ball. And I think Jaden Daniels arguably throws the best deep ball of anyone in the class. Obviously the top guys, and Drake May and Caleb Williams could give him a run for his money, but Jaden Daniels throws an amazing deep ball. So in a situation where the Falcons do keep Arthur Smith, we know that this offense has looked the best when they've had a quarterback who can threaten the run, right? Marcus Mariota, even when he was a just terrible passer, the run game was clicking because teams really had to respect that he was willing to run the ball. Jaden Daniels is a much better runner than even Marcus Mariota was. And he's a much better passer too. So those deep play action shots, I mean, Jaden Daniels has a special deep ball. He's very good in that area. And he's cleaned up a lot of the intermediate and short stuff too. I mean, I think last season for him, his first year at LSU, really cut down on the turnovers, really shifted to a more conservative, safer style of play. And then this year just unleashed everything he's learned. He's taking the deep shots when they're appropriate. He's nailing them. And he's not turning the ball over. He's got 30 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, and he's rushed for 1,000 yards at 8.1 yards per carry and 8 rushing touchdowns. Really, the one thing I think you could say about Daniels is that he's light right now. I think he's playing, under 200. Probably in that 190-ish range. Some sites do say that he's bulked up to 200. I mean, we won't really know for sure probably until the Senior Bowl, which he just accepted an invite to. So don't worry, I'll have eyes on Jaden Daniels at the Senior Bowl. You can guarantee that. But he's he's going to be fine, I think. I mean, he's over 6'3". This is not a Bryce Young sort of size situation, but he's a guy that if he's going to run in the NFL at any sort of volume, I mean, he's going to have to add weight. There's just no way around that. But getting from 190 to 200, or maybe even a little bit above, it might take some time. And maybe if he's already at 200, like some have said, getting up to 210, it's not the most daunting thing. It's going to take some time, and obviously it's not just easy to add 10 pounds, like good weight. So hopefully he can do that. That's something that obviously you can correct. You can get a guy in the weight room and add some good weight. And obviously I don't think they're going to be leaning on him to run the ball as much as he's run in college, where he's gotten like over 100 carries every year. I think you're probably trying to keep that in like the 75 to 80 range. But he offers that true dual threat ability. I think he does have special potential. And as a fifth-year senior, he's a lot more experienced than you might think. Obviously at Arizona State, the passing wasn't always great. And in fact, it was ugly sometimes. Really, it was just deep ball. Like he was really just good at the deep ball and made a lot of mistakes otherwise. And you can see every year how he's grown. And I think it's really impressive. And to me, that's a big green flag when a guy is getting better every single year. You can see that they're taking the coaching and they're excelling against a higher level competition. These are all things that I look for. If you go from a lower level to a higher level and excel, that's a really good sign. If you're getting better every single year, that's a good sign. It's not foolproof, but it's a good start. And, he's the one I want, and given my love for Malik Willis, it shouldn't surprise anyone. I think dual threats are the way of the future. I think with teams sort of sitting, going back into this cover 2 trend and all this, and the way the Falcons are built to run the football, I think going for a dual threat quarterback is really smart. I think it complements what this offense wants to do really well and just adds that extra wrinkle. And this is nothing against the other guys that the Falcons are probably considering here, which would probably be Michael Penix from Washington, and then Bo Nix from Oregon. We all know J.J. McCarthy is going to be a Patriot, so you don't have to worry. You don't have to think about J.J. McCarthy. I feel very strongly that the Patriots are going to snap him up. I mean, it's just too obvious, right? But I think there's a chance that you can sit at 9 or 10 or 12 or wherever the Falcons end up picking and probably still get Jaden Daniels. I think Bo Nix could go ahead of Daniels and Penix. Penix probably should be the third quarterback off the board, right? I mean, I've talked about it, but those medicals, I just don't know. Like, teams could take him off their board entirely for those medicals. He's had so many season-ending injuries. It's going to terrify some teams. It really just depends. Is there someone early in the draft that's willing to take him high, or is he going to fall because of the medical stuff? Clearly, in terms of talent, it's not an issue. It's not at all an issue. I think he's one of the best, cleanest passing prospects that we have this year. It's just the medical stuff. So we'll have to see. So, to me, I'm sort of imagining that the Falcons, given their caution with a lot of players, I mean, mostly off-field caution, right? I don't think Penix has any of those issues. Given their propensity for caution, I think they probably go for someone like Daniels instead of Penix. But we'll see. Long way to go, obviously. But yeah, if you're going to comment on this and say, oh, he's going on day 2, this is a wasted pick. This is not a pick for what the mock draft simulators are saying right now. This is me trying to project out to the draft as well as I can. And Jaden Daniels is not going in the 3rd round. There's no way. I mean, maybe late first, but I think by the time we get to the combine, he'll be getting mocked in the top 10. Does he actually go in the top 10? I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but I think there's a good chance that he's a top 20 pick at minimum by the time the combine gets here, and we'll see if I look stupid. I'm not afraid to look stupid sometimes, but I'm planting my flag that this will be, by the time we get to the draft, this will be a spot that he's getting mocked more often than not. That brings, with the Falcons going with a quarterback in the 1st round, of course, that pushes their biggest, or one of their biggest needs down the board to the 2nd round, and that's edge rusher. And luckily, this is a pretty good edge class. There's a lot of guys in the 1st round. There's a number of guys that should be available in this early day 2 range for the Falcons to get a contributor here. And I'm going to go, I haven't done extensive work on this class. I sort of just have watched the big name guys a little bit, in live viewing and stuff like that. So this isn't going to be like a deep dive or a shocking pick here, where with the Falcons going with edge rusher JT Tuimoloau, I think is how you say it. So if someone in the comments is familiar, let me know, but I think it's Tuimoloau, I believe. But we'll see. We'll workshop that. We'll get some get some some pronunciation help. But yeah, I mean, if the Falcons are sticking with Ryan Nielsen's defense, which is going to prefer the prototype 4-3 type of edge rushers, Tuimoloau is a good fit. Like that's what he is. 6'4", 270, long, strong, elite run defender. I mean, I would argue he's one of the best run defenders in the entire class. He's awesome there. He'll be able to start right away and provide elite run defending, which that's the first step in Ryan Nielsen's defense, is they got to stop the run. So this type of player, they will favor over some other guys that can't stop the run, because that that's why you're not seeing Arnold Ebiketie play as much, because they don't trust him against the run. So he's not playing on base downs, whereas Tuimoloau, they're not going to have any concerns there. So that's going to lead to him getting a lot of early playing time. And like as a pass rusher, everything you want is there, right? He's got the traits. He's got a tremendous motor. His first step is awesome. He's explosive. I think he's got very good flexibility for his size. I mean, he's not going to bend the edge like, outside linebacker stand-up guy, but he can definitely get around the corner. It's just like a lot of the day two guys, right? He needs to develop more. He needs more counter moves. He needs to hone that technique. He's got to be a little bit better with how he's countering stuff, how he's getting to the quarterback, and just building up that consistency, because that's really the one thing that Tuimoloau doesn't have, is consistency as a pass rusher. He's got some really awesome flashes on tape. You can see why he's going to be maybe even going earlier than this in drafts, because he's got all the traits, and he has taken over games. Like, he has led Ohio State's defense to wins with his ability, but he hasn't done it consistently. The sack numbers are just kind of mediocre. They're just kind of average, and that's going to terrify people, I know. But we're picking in the second round here. This is not a slam dunk, top 10 pick at edge rusher. We're going to have to take a risk on somebody, and I would bet on Tuimoloau. I think this is the type of guy they want. His floor as a run defender is really high, so no matter what, you're going to get someone that can play on early downs for you. And I think that when you see a motor like that, that always makes you feel like, okay, this is a guy we can coach up. He's got the motor, he's got the energy and the effort. He's going to take to the coaching and all that stuff. And that's Ryan Nielsen's specialty. And we'll see, what he does with Zach Harrison, another big toolsy Ohio State rusher, right? Who's been getting a little bit more playing time. So I think Tuimoloau has an even higher pass rush ceiling than Zach Harrison. I think he's flashed more. But, I think you got to take a swing on somebody here, even if there's no perfect prospect. Another guy to consider might be like Florida's Princely Umanmielen, I think is what it is. But I haven't watched him. I know he's getting a lot of hype as a riser, potential day two pick. So he's another guy, sort of a 4-3 sort of prototype. So we'll see who ends up being in this range by the time we actually get closer to January. But for now, I think Tuimoloau is probably the one I'd have circled as sort of the ideal pick here if he does happen to fall into the 40s at this stage. Moving on to the third round picks. The first one is going to be at pick 73. And we know that the Falcons have a couple of offensive needs. I think that maybe play caller is the biggest one. We'll see what happens there. But regardless of who they get at play caller, I think they would be wise to see if they can get a swing tackle. I think they would be wise, and I think they need a swing tackle. They probably need a new right tackle starter long term, but you're not getting that in the third round. More than likely, you're probably getting a swing tackle and maybe someone you can develop into a starter. But they also need a wide receiver too, really bad. They've tried to sort of scrape by with lesser wide receiver twos. They seem to be refusing to play Kyle Pitts outside. I hope a new coaching staff or somebody else comes in and kicks Arthur Smith in the butt and tells him, you need to play Pitts outside, because why are we not? You can hear my rant on Wednesday's Falcoholic Live if you want to hear me go into the details of why it makes no sense that Kyle Pitts has basically been taken completely out of the rotation outside, given the other receivers the Falcons have. But they need a wide receiver too. And I think the ideal guy would be someone with size who can play. They need a dynamic guy. Obviously, they need a deep threat. They need someone that can create separation and be a little bit more dynamic, but they need someone that can play outside, and they need someone that can play in the slot so that you can shift Kyle Pitts around, or you can move some players around and do these formation mismatches that the Falcons like to do. And that's why I really like Oregon's Troy Franklin, who is this big slot and outside receiver. He's played both spots extensively, and he's got great speed. He's a size speed guy, right? He's 6'3", reportedly runs in the mid 4.3s, which is amazing. Really, he's very light, right? I think he's playing under 190, which is pretty light when you're 6'3". That's very thin. So, obviously you can tell from that what the issues with him are going to be. It's not, he's dynamic. He could play outside. He could play inside. He's got that good height. He catches the ball well. He's got good hands. And he's got tremendous overall athleticism. I think he's got elite long speed. I think he's got good short area quickness and explosiveness. He's clearly gifted with the ball in his hands. I think he's got some return ability as well. He can create big gains off short throws, screens, whatever. It's just the size and physicality that's the issue. He's too light. He doesn't hold up to contact super well. He could struggle when pressed sometimes by the big, really good corners. He's just not ever probably going to, I think you're probably going to ask him to try to get to 200 and try to bulk him up a little bit. Even that wouldn't be like super heavy for a receiver, but that would be a good step for him that I think would sort of nullify a lot of this. But he's never going to be that high-end physical possession receiver. But that's why we have Drake London, right? Like Drake London is that guy. Mac Hollins is Drake London's backup. We've got two physical receivers that can play that possession role. They need a dynamic guy. And I think you're going for someone like a Franklin who can just complement whatever you want to do. If you want Kyle Pitts lined up outside, you can put Franklin in the slot. If you want Kyle Pitts in the slot, you can put Franklin outside. If you want to play Kyle Pitts inline still, then maybe we're looking for a new offensive coordinator, whatever. But I think he's a great compliment. And this is a deep receiver class, so you're going to see some good receivers falling into this range. Franklin, not a prototypical one because he doesn't have the physicality to sort of do everything, but I think what he does do is a great compliment to what the Falcons have, and I think he would just really work super well with the existing weapons. He's obviously got the size that Arthur Smith likes, and just provides more dynamic athleticism to the passing game that they really need. So that's my priority here with this pick is getting that wide receiver 2 that the team really needs, and it's also important that it's a rookie because they're going to have to pay London and Pitts soon. They're going to have two big, receiver, quote unquote, contracts there. They can't really afford to pay a wide receiver 2 or 3 big money because of that. So they're going to need to find some cheaper players there. Finding a cheap wide receiver 3 is not that hard, but getting a cheap wide receiver 2, you sort of have to hit on one of these day 2 draft picks. And I think going for Troy Franklin here is a great shot at doing that. And I really like how he can slot into this offense. And the last pick we're going to get to today, it's Jacksonville's 3rd rounder, pick 89. And I really just want to keep bulking up the defensive line. I think after the Grady Jarrett injury, the interior defensive line was playing so well before Grady Jarrett and LaKale London went down in the same game for a long period of time. And it really just exposed that the depth here is just not good enough. They still haven't really found a nose tackle. Kentavious Street, I think he's probably someone they're going to keep. I think he's a good depth piece, but I don't know with Taquan Graham, is it that this new scheme isn't such a good fit for him anymore? Is it that he's still recovering from injury? But whatever it is, he just doesn't look like he did last year where he was really starting to flash, looked like he had potential to be a starter and instead sort of relegated to being inactive some weeks, not really making an impact. I still think Taquan Graham can be a depth player, but I think you're looking to solidify the interior depth with another higher end player. And I think between LaKale London and Kentavious Street and Taquan Graham, you've got some versatile guys, some guys that can play around, but you still don't really have that nose tackle for when you need short yardage, when you want to play really dominant base package defense, when you want to have a goal line guy. They don't have that, and you don't have to spend a lot to get a decent one. But if you want to get a difference maker, you do typically have to draft one, earlier. And we're not talking about necessarily like a Vita Vea, Dontari Poe type, but I do think Texas's Tavondre Sweat is a guy that can be a very high-end nose tackle, a senior breakout. Hopefully we'll see him at the Senior Bowl as well. This dude is just an absolute unit, man. 6'4", 362, and he doesn't lumber. He plays with a lot better athleticism than I was expecting. He's he's just a brick wall. He's so tough to move off the line. He plays with really good leverage despite the height, and the height also helps that weight spread out a lot more. Like, he's probably going to need to get down to 340 in the NFL, get to that Vita Vea, Paul Solia, sort of Dontari Poe range. And I think if he does that, he's got good athleticism at 362. So at 340, I think he'll look a little smoother. He'll have better stamina. He'll be able to play harder for longer. And he's just an absolutely dominant run defender. And again, we know Nielsen's tenets of this defense is you got to stop the run to earn the right to rush the passer. And getting a dominant nose in here that can free up, David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett from having to do that dirty work at one tech against the run is going to keep those guys fresher, is going to expose them to fewer snaps overall, and keep them for those key down and distance, key drive situations. T'Vondre Sweat, I think he's got a super high ceiling as a nose tackle. He could be a dominant run defender. The pass rush is very much up in the air. He's actually been fairly productive this year as like a pocket pusher. He does have pretty good first step burst. He does actually use his hands pretty well. And because he plays with such good leverage and burst for his size, he just catches a lot of centers off guard. He's been very productive, which isn't really a thing for a lot of nose tackles because they just have to eat 2 blockers most of the time. He's got 7.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks this year, which is impressive for a nose tackle. So I think he has upside as a pass rusher. It's never going to be like you're taking David Onyemata or Grady Jarrett off the field, but I think his upside as a pass rusher is like he's maybe not a net negative, whereas a lot of nose tackles, they're not really providing anything in terms of pass rush. So if it's a pass play, they're just sort of going to put their hands up, which he's great at. He's had, I think, 3 or 4 passes deflected every single season. So he's a guy that's always going to get his hand up and try to knock stuff down, which is great. You love to see that. But I don't think he's a net negative. He may be sort of just a average pass rusher, but for a nose tackle, that's like a run defending specialist. That's really not bad. It's actually nice. So I love T'Vondre Sweat. You guys know me. I love a big old nose tackle. And yeah, like I said, absolute unit. Just bring a lot of swagger to this defensive line. And I think getting that type of player, which I think they hoped that Eddie Goldman would be that guy for them. He doesn't end up showing up. They hoped that Timmy Horn would sort of seize control of that. That never really happened. I think you need to take another swing at getting someone. And another guy, if they go a little bit earlier, might be like Dante Corleone, or Dante Corleone, depending on your pronunciation, Godfather style, right? He's someone I definitely like. He's definitely got more pass rush juice, but he's probably a 2nd round pick. So it just like if they get if this 3rd round pick becomes a 2nd round pick, maybe you could talk about what that pick becomes, how that might change things. But for now, with this 3rd round pick, you're probably going to have to go a little bit more specialized with it. And again, like I said, this could be a spot where if a swing tackle falls, this could be a good spot. This is a spot where, if you find a safety that you like, because Richie Grant's clearly not it, maybe you go after a safety here. I think those are kind of the spots you're looking for. So I think, bolstering those areas of need, maybe even another edge rusher if somebody you really like falls here. But I think that T'Vondre Sweat's a good pick here, and I think people will be pretty happy with him. Again, like he's going to be able to come in and play from day one in base packages. Same with JT Tuimoloau. So it's like you're at least adding a lot of strength and early down ability to your defense. Even if these guys take some time to develop as pass rushers, you're adding something that you can count on immediately. And I think with the team potentially entering a must-win sort of season, if Arthur Smith's here, or with a new coaching staff entering a season where there's going to be a lot of expectations to do better than the previous regime, these sort of early contributors will go a long way. So that's my mock draft, guys. I hope you like it. Again, we got a long way to go before we even get to like real draft season, right? We still got like another month and a half of college football. We still got, the Senior Bowl. We still got the Combine. A lot of ways to go. So this is really just a super early look at how a potential draft class to unfold. As you can see, even with the 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, it's still tough to hit all the Falcons' needs, with quarterback being one of them. It would be nice to be able to spend that 9th overall pick on like Laiatu Latu or one of these top edge rushers. they're probably not going to be able to do that. They're probably going to have to get the quarterback. I think they need to get the quarterback. But they've got a lot of free agency resources. Maybe they bring back some of their own guys. Maybe they go out and go all out to try to get, Danielle Hunter in here or something like that. That would be a great move too. But we'll see. We got a long way to go. Appreciate you guys hanging out. The bye week is in full swing. Always fun to get some draft takes out there. Well, we're not going to do a ton of draft takes, prior to the end of the season, but I may do a couple mock drafts here and there, especially if the team falls off a cliff, because then once we get into the top 5, it's going to get really spicy. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe if you enjoyed today's draft takes. Please do leave that 5-star review if you're listening on your podcast platforms. Check out the Patreon. If you're a podcast listener, the Patreon's got a lot of benefits for you. We'll also it's patreon.com/Falcoholic we will also be rolling out YouTube channel memberships or whatever they call it for the YouTube audience. If you're a video listener, you'll get early access to videos. You'll get some cool exclusive stuff that the patrons also get, like access to the fantasy leagues, access to the Q&A sessions. I'll make an announcement when that's officially rolled out, but we're going to have that going at some point here. So if you're more of a podcast person, the Patreon is what you want. If you're more of a YouTube person, the YouTube channel memberships are probably going to be more what you want. And I'm still trying to see if I can find a way to get them to link up better, make them play nice together so that you could just buy one for both. But so far, I've been kind of running into some snags there. So we'll do what we can. But of course, check out the community Discord too. That's completely free for everyone. Join up there, chat around, have a good time, and enjoy this just, terribly flawed team that we're still, going to be obsessed about, even if they're terrible once again this year. But guys, I'm Kevin, at Falcoholic Kevin. Check out falcoholic.com as well. Today's show is, of course, brought to you by BetOnline. We will see you next week for, I believe we're going to have a Q&A session on Monday night. So look for the announcement on that for the patrons and the channel members. We'll, of course, also have that'll be you can watch it after it's live taped. It'll be open to everyone after it's live taped. The live will just be for the patrons and everybody to ask questions and stuff, and then we'll get that published. But thanks again, guys. Appreciate everyone for sticking with us through this tough season. We will see you next time on Dirty Birds and Brews and the Falcoholic Live. Until then, folks, have a great day.